Hello! Today's video will show you step-by-step how to create a snowflake spinner card with custom embossed designs. This is the first project of my December 2020 class series. The second project is a holiday tree ornament. For those of you who purchased my class kit, please take a moment now to make sure you have all the pieces shown here. It should be in the envelope provided, and I've also added the dimensions here if you want to create this project from scratch. A full list of materials can be found at my blog. We're going to start by cutting our 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock long ways at 4 1/4. And this second piece, I'm going to trim it to 4 inches wide. So I have one piece that's 4 1/4 by 11 and another that's 4 inches by 11. All right, the smaller piece now I am going to score at 3 3/16 of an inch. The reason for this, you'll see a little bit later. I'm going to use this with an embossing folder. So 3 3/16. I'm doing this on both ends. And then down the middle, measuring at 5 1/2, I am only scoring at the very top and very bottom of the cardstock. It doesn't need to be longer than 1/4 of an inch long. For the larger piece, the 4 1/4 by 11, I am scoring just down the middle at 5 1/2 inches. Now I'm going to go ahead and fold along the 5 1/2 score line of the larger piece, and only at the 3 3/16 folds. And here you get a better close-up of the two pieces, and now I'm going to explain why. I'm going to use a 3-inch circle die to cut a circle right in the middle. And after I cut that circle, then I'm going to emboss and then I'm going to fold. So I wanted these lines folded to give me a guideline. So I used this little tape to find the perfect middle. This doesn't need to be exactly precise, but you do want to try to find the middle as best you can. And so now I'm going to use an embossing folder. It's about 4 1/2 inches wide, and this is why I chose to have these two score line dimensions at 3 3/16. If I had it at 3 1/4, it would be much more difficult to fold the card flaps over the outside of the embossing folder as it ran through your machine. And I also did this to just add this nice detail to the inside of my card without adding an extra layer of paper. And so now for my class participants, this is probably going to be the first action for you. You're going to fold this prepared piece right along the middle here. So I brought the two ends together, and I'm kind of squishing or sandwiching the center line in between those. Okay, so when finished, it's going to look like an M. This score line is going to fold in the opposite direction of your card. Okay, now before we actually put these two pieces together, I am going to prepare my spinning piece. So it can be a snowflake in this case. You should have your two pieces in your card kit. For anyone else following along, a lot of different things work here. You can see butterflies. Some people do mirror stamping, so you get the front and back of the same image. You can use a circle, so you can pretty much use any image on a circle, and then the two circles can be adhered and spun together. Okay, but I'm using Balmy Blue and Night of Navy as my two colors here. For Balmy Blue, I put a full layer of ink down, and for the Night of Navy, I just added some touches of that to get this kind of a watercolor look. with these distinctive stamps in this Snowflake Wishes stamp set. Okay, so I'm doing this again for my second snowflake. The key for picking your spinning image is just something that is symmetrical. All right, and now we're going to trim down this 4" by 6" piece of designer series paper. Okay, so that way I'm left with 2 pieces of 3 by 4. And now for my class participants, again, we need to identify the top and the bottom of this piece. So if you look at it from above, this little point here, that's the top of your paper. We want to flip that over so it is facing down towards your table. Now you're going to grab a piece of thread. Again, this sheet of paper is 4 inches wide, so your thread doesn't need to be much longer than that. This is just basic sewing thread. I'm using white. I know a lot of people for this spinner card technique use different kinds of thread or string here. I made it very simple for today's project. And now you should also have 4 glue dots in your kit as well. So the glue dots are key here. I think glue dots are very good adhesive. They're going to adhere to the thread, and it's going to help the thread not move, which is critical for this interactive piece. So now we're applying glue dots on the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle, right along that crease. Okay. Now go ahead and take your thread and pull it as tight as you can. Lay it down on the top glue dot, and again, keeping it nice and tight along the top of the bottom glue dot. Now we're going to take our 2 spinning symmetrical pieces. Okay, one side should be stamped, one side should be white. And now I'm lining this up to be in the center of my circle. You want to do this to make sure that it'll spin freely. Okay, and now I'm pointing out, we want to put the 2 remaining glue dots at the top of your snowflake and one on the bottom. So in a straight line, again, so that the string can adhere to it. All right, so now I'm placing this carefully underneath the thread, as centered as I can. Okay, if your string moves at all, again, just pull that tight. And now I'm going to use liquid glue around the rest of this snowflake, around the glue dots, and along the thread. And then I'm going to place my second image right on top of it. Once I get this together, I'm going to line it up as best I can. I'm not going to touch this piece. I really want it to dry. I really want the adhesion to be great along this thread. Once you have this placed right in the center and the string is nice and tight, we're going to take some basic single-sided tape, Scotch tape. I cut one little strip of tape in half, so it's a nice and skinny piece, and I covered it over the thread. Okay. If you happen to have glue dots on you, then you can use a second glue dot before you apply the tape. I think that would make the string stay a little bit tight and not move a little bit better. But I didn't provide an extra glue dot in my kit. So if you're a crafter and you have that, definitely recommend adding a second glue dot or red tape, that red liner tape. Okay, both of those are really great in this scenario. All right, and so there is our completed inside piece. Okay, and now we're going to glue the back side. Make sure that this is the back side. And you can just glue one side, the right or the left first, to apply it to your card base. I happen to do both. Okay, but once you have the glue applied, go ahead and flip it over. And I want you guys to be aware that I did make the snowflake piece thinner so that there could be a border all the way around. Okay, so you'll notice a nice thin white border all the way around the snowflake piece. Okay, so this is what it should look like from the top. And now we're going to take our 2 pieces of designer series paper and figure out which side we want to use. Okay, but again, where we're going to place this, there should be a white border around all 4 sides. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my glue. I like liquid glue again when I need to kind of smush around or position the paper exactly where I want it to. You could use your double-sided adhesive as well. All right, and now for the card front. I want to explain how I created this custom embossing sheet. Okay, I just used regular dies, nothing fancy, and a adhesive-backed magnetic sheet. And I did this on a bigger piece of scrap white cardstock. So that way when I position my typical 4 by 5 1/4 card front, that I can kind of position it wherever I'd like on this embossing sheet. And to utilize this embossing sheet, I put my card front down first on this impression mat, silicone impression mat. Then I put my custom embossing sheet face down, pressing onto my card front into the impression mat, and then I sandwich it as I normally would for any thin die. And then when I run that through the machine, that's when I get this awesome impression, custom impression. The magnetic material is pretty amazing for that. I use adhesive-backed magnetic material. That way I can, have it permanently adhered to a piece of cardstock. And now these custom embossing sheets, they will not last forever, but definitely I get quite a few uses out of these. I think I made 40 plus card kits. All right, so now I'm taking the new blending brushes that we have. These mimic makeup brushes. And I am using Balmy Blue and Night of Navy. And you can tell this Night of Navy actually has this purple hue. But I kind of picked these 2 colors and kind of this really random pattern just to kind of mimic the paper that this went with, the designer series paper. You will notice that your final card base is a little bit more sharp with the impression on one side and a little bit more dull on the other. You might have use cases for either of those, but I did my ink blending on the sharper side. All right, so now I'm just stamping my sentiment onto a 3/4 inch by 4 inch strip of white cardstock. This is the Snowflake Wishes sentiment. And you can just use snips here to make it look like a banner. I used this banner punch. All right. And now I'm speeding through this. I am just die cutting some additional snowflakes. One from Balmy Blue glimmer paper, Night of Navy, and white cardstock. So those are the 3 that I have for my card front. And for all my class participants, you definitely should have at least 3 little snowflakes in your kit. All right, now on the back side of this card front, we're going to glue that to the front of our card. Again, leaving a little border, white border around all sides. This white circle that's left over from when we die cut our inside piece, that I positioned it to the bottom right. You can put it wherever you'd like. I'm planning on putting the banner right on the bottom there, bottom of the circle. And I'm using the dimensionals here to pop this up a little bit higher than the circle and the card front. Okay, so I believe I gave you all 4 dimensionals here for this purpose. pick it off the back side of the paper, stick it down, and then you pull off the backing from this dimensional foam dot, and then you can adhere it down. If you have glue dots, go ahead and use them here. I'm just using liquid glue. And I'm going to position all of my snowflakes on or around this white circle here. Okay, my little white one I had sticking over the side there. So it's kind of peeking out from the background. Okay, so there's the final card. And for the spinner on the inside. Okay, so now it should have had plenty of time to dry and adhere together. I am winding this about 20 times, and I'm going counterclockwise. So I am using one finger to stop the snowflake from spinning backwards, and I'm using another finger to move it from the left to the right as I'm going in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, once you have it winded and you can feel a little bit of tension, that's when you go ahead and close your card, put it in the envelope, so that way when your recipient opens it, it has a nice spin to it. Thanks for joining me today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. See you next time.